Hey guys, we have a quick video today where we will solder FunnyPlaying Type-C port for charging and audio to a Game Boy Advance SP. As you can see, the original charging port is already soldered off for this particular console, and that is because whenever I wait for parts to arrive, I tend to do some work prior to the arrival of the parts. In this case, I did not film the removal process, but I will keep in mind to show that in the future as well. Instead, today we will focus on the way that I solder this port, in case in which you want to do the same or you're unsure how to go about this. We first apply some flux to the area in which we will be soldering, and then I like to place the port down where it will be soldered and move it around with my tweezers for a more precise placement. These large holes that you can see on each side of the ports are for holding the port in place. And after that, there are 6 smaller soldering joints which will be connected to the motherboard for the port to function properly. Now we can apply some solder to one side of the port, and then we can make sure to apply a generous amount of solder to the tip of our soldering iron. Hold down the port with tweezers while soldering this side down to the pad. Now we can move to the other side, although this time we don't really need to hold the port down as much since the other side was soldered and the port kind of stays in place. Once the port is soldered from both sides for support, we can then clean the flux with IPA and move on to the next step, which is where the soldering job gets a little bit more challenging. I would recommend being very cautious around this zone, as you can heat up and potentially even desolder the resistors around the port area, or much worse, you could just bridge the legs of the chip that's close to this port. In either of the cases, you will cause a lot more work than necessary, so I would advise that you take it slow and just make sure that you're not distracted. Now to the soldering then. We apply some flux to the area and use our soldering iron to heat up. This particular section, a few tips to keep in mind here are, you need to ensure that you're holding your soldering iron, with a steady hand, and that the tip of the soldering iron is clean. If it's not clean or there's too much solder attached to it, you may bridge the contact points, or you may actually just struggle to melt the solder and connect the joints. In case in which you connect one or multiple of the joints together, what you would need to do is to get a soldering wick and then apply heat on it while holding it on top of the solder. Basically, the soldering wick would suck in the solder and then you could start again. This also takes a little bit of practice, but just to let you know. As you can see, I go through the contact points one by one, and I verify the status quite often. There's nothing wrong with taking it slow and verifying the work as you go. Once I believe the work is done, we can clean the flux with some IPA and check the work. As I plug the charging cable, you can see that the orange light turns on. As there is no battery attached, the light turns off pretty quick. What you need to do next is to install a battery to this motherboard and check that the orange light stays on whenever the charger is plugged in. Hope you enjoyed this video and it helped you out. See you next time.